So we go through stages as we are moving toward who we really are, boiled down to our core, and as we move toward our eternal destination. So Swedenborg says, I'm going to read this one passage to you to start out with. There are three states we pass through after death before we arrive in either heaven or hell. The first state is one of more outward concerns. The second is one of more inward concerns. And the third is one of preparation. We go through these states in the world of spirits. Now, what I want to point out is just write those down for a second. So the first stage, let's just put stages. You just have to put up with my handwriting. One, outward concerns. I'm just going to put outward. Some places he calls this externals. Other translations. Externals. Outward concerns, inward concerns, and he calls that internal state, internals. And then finally, he talks about instruction, and we'll talk about it as well. Great. So when he talks about outward concerns, or when we first wake up in the other world and we still are very much like we were in the world, we still have outward concerns. We still act very much like in the world. We can still, be nice to people. We may not feel it inside. We still go through all the emotions, whether they're negative or positive. We still haven't been even started to come down to who we really are like. But this is a state that we all start out in. So Swedenborg says about this in his Afterlife, page 30. We are trained from infancy to present ourselves as friendly, benevolent, and honest, and to conceal the thoughts of our own intentions. So we acquire a habitual lifestyle that is outwardly moral and civil, no matter what we are like inwardly. As a result of this habitual behavior, we scarcely know our inner natures and pay attention to them. So he's saying, in this world, we can fake it. I mean, we do. We just put on an outward appearance. How many people are running around saying all these terrible things to each other? I hope not too many. Okay. But here we're civil, we can fake it, and we can be, most of us, live a life where sometimes we're in a bad mood, sometimes in a good mood, and we try to put on a happy face or whatever. But we also know that there are people, and maybe we have experienced something where we're in a very negative state. People that are hypocritical, in what they're doing. People who have an ulterior motive for being nice and good, want to take advantage of people and things like that. We can fake it. People can fake it. Evil people, so to speak, who might end up in hell, can fake it, and they're good people. And a good person may not really be that in touch with their goodness within. They've been too busy, caught up in things of the world. So this first state, this outward concerns, we're not really that in touch with who we are within. We're starting to get there. Now, it is this first state, it's interesting, that we actually meet our friends and relatives in this first state. And that makes sense. I mean, they come into, let's say someone that's been there for a while, comes back into that state of externals with us. I mean, so that's why we recognize them. That's why we can talk to each other. They're very fresh. In their memory of us. And so we can converse. In fact, later on, we're going to see this very soon. It's often our friends who introduce us to this world, or our relatives introduce us to this new world that we are in. But in this stage, we are in externals. I just want to read talking about friends and relatives here. As soon as we arrive in the other life, we are all recognized by our friends and relatives and by people we have known one way or another. Their friends tell them about the state of eternal life and take them around to various places in the company of different people. They go to different cities, to gardens, and to parks. I love that idea. I mean, it's not like someone, you get there and some angel is simply sitting there going, now I will take you around and show you heaven, da-da-da. But think about like maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a friend or a partner. Maybe it's your sister, whoever it is. And they're like, come, let me show you this place. It's real. You're alive, I'm alive, we're here, and let me show you around. I love that. I just love the idea that someone I know and I'm connected to is going to introduce me into this new world and where it all goes. That's outward concerns. Now, what happens next is we come into more and more into our inward concerns or internals. Now, what that means, again, is the idea that I've been talking about is that slowly we become who we really are. That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is who we really are on the inside begins to show up in our outward lives there. It's hard for, in one sense, it's hard for us to fake it anymore. We really become, who we are. With a good person, that's just a really great thing as they're moving along, because I'm sure we can all relate to this, that, we might have a lot of good loves and want to serve people and all that, but maybe we have something that that just seems to cling on to us. Maybe some kind of fear that clings on to us that stops us from being more useful. Maybe it's we get in bad moods occasionally, I got a headache, so I take it out on somebody else. I don't mean to do it. There's these things that maybe I've got a foul mouth or something. I wish I didn't. I'm a good person, but it's just something, I have a hard time getting rid of. Whatever it is. Imagine somebody that's pure, it's good and loving on the inside. They've got these things, but through time in this second stage, they're able to shed those off. To shed off those things that maybe they've been trying to shed off for years. Let go of the fears, let go of the bad habits that they have, and come in to the fullness of who they are. And so people can see it. And so they say even people who, and Curtis mentioned this in his last video, people are beautiful on the inside regardless of what they look like on the outside. That beauty shows up on the outside. The inner beauty becomes their outer beauty as well. And think about it for people who predominantly are in a love of self or evil or selfishness or however you want to put it, and from your religious perspective, how they can't fake it anymore. They really come into who they are. So, someone can't pretend that they're good. Someone can't take advantage of someone else anymore. They start to have to own who they are in this new stage. And so we play around in the class. I just have, people get up and we do this little skit where we're walking around talking to each other. And at first I'm really friendly with the person. Hi, how are you? And then go meet someone else and like, oh, you look pretty good. Well, actually you don't look that good or whatever. And then I go to somebody else and say, oh boy, that's such a, neat computer you have. And then I say, I'm going to take that from that person if they weren't looking. And finally I just walk up to somebody and grab their laptop and run out the door. I'm trying to show them an example of someone on the inside being, evil, selfish, or whatever. Slowly, they can't fake it anymore. It just comes out. And they are moving more and more toward their eternal destination, which is a destination of hell. And so you've got people that are moving on toward heaven and people moving on toward hell. But let me just read you a little bit about this internal concerns. And this is from page 35, The Afterlife. We need to know that our basic quality is determined entirely by the quality of our inner natures. This is because our inner reaches are our spirit. And since it is from the spirit that the body lives, our life is the life of our spirit. Consequently, whatever we are like in our inward natures, that is what we are like to eternity. Now, I'd love to give you a really good sense of this. There's a video from Off the Left Eye, Curtis Childs, and it's called No Pretense in the Afterlife. So if you just watch that, and I'll get right back to you after we watch that video, No Pretense in the Afterlife.
Think about how much of the unpleasantness in life comes about because we don't know what kind of people we're dealing with. Oh, she just called me pathetic. Does that mean I am? Is she just an objective, neutral observer who happened to have a piercing insight about what I'm like? But in reality, this is a person who habitually cuts people down as a power trip thing, and often out of jealousy. If you knew that in the first place, it would make this insult a lot easier to brush off, wouldn't it? Or what about, this guy seems to be a good guy to hire to redo my kitchen? Knowing his work ethic and his attitude toward cutting corners would have been nice. According to Swedenborg, you won't have to worry about stuff like this in the afterlife. There, when someone approaches you, you can not only tell how someone looks and sounds and smells, you can also tell what their character is like, instantly. He says we all gain a kind of instinct for it. So there, choosing a plumber is no problem. Sorry, Angie's List.
Okay, so back from there? Yeah, so like we talked about not being able to fake it anymore. I really want to get this idea down. We talked about like, so for somebody good, they become more and more pure in who they are. And somebody who is predominantly their ruling love was evil, they become more and more who they are as well. But the way you can see how they progress in the other world is almost looking at it as them taking a journey, okay? So it's always easier, more fun. To talk about people who are on their way to hell with college students. I don't know why. They just like to talk about it that way rather than like some person being good and going off to heaven. So again, we talk about in that course how, you end up being with different friends. So let's say you're a really bad person, right? So in the beginning, you're ending up with these friends, you're talking to these friends and, and maybe you say, hey, look, do you know anything we can do, and go off and, act out and do something bad. And maybe some of them go, oh, look, hey, I'm not into that. And then others go, yeah, sure, I'll join you. And then you go off, to this place where you're able to be a little bit more yourself. And then you're going to find some people that maybe want to go a little further and do a little bit more wrong that's like you and that love those wrong things. And finally, you end up with friends who are very much like you and are very much bad people. And so what you do is you're gravitating through your relationships toward your eternal destination. And in the case of someone who is in evil, gravitating through those relationships into your final destination in hell. All right, we'll do a good one too, okay? So someone who's predominantly good, it would be the other way. Maybe at first they're hanging out with a mix of people, and some of them they realize they just don't get along with. These people are selfish. These people are lying to each other, whatever it is. They don't want to do that anymore. So they find some people who are more like them. Maybe there's somebody who's more innocent or something like that they just tend to bond to. And maybe they walk off in their journey together, and then they find someone that just really is just putting out this beautiful, loving energy. And they go, wow, I can really connect to that. And they keep moving on until they find themselves in angelic company with angels, because they are an angel inside. And so they find that final destination in heaven through those relationships. Now, the last thing I want to say about this, though, is there is a third state, and that is a state of instruction. Now, what's interesting is Swedenborg says this third state, this stage of instruction, is only for those who are going to heaven. Only those who are going to heaven are instructed about, what's heaven going to be like? What is real faith? What is living the life of heaven? They want to know more. And so they're instructed in more. One way to look at it is, do evil people need to be instructed? Like say you're on your way to hell. Well, what are you going to do? Teach somebody to be worse? It doesn't work that way. People, they don't want to be instructed, Swedenborg says. There's even a passage about that. Evil people cannot be taught anything good after life 39. They can't be taught anything good. And there's really no reason for them to be taught. So this state of instruction is for good people. And they're taught, this is really cool, according to their faith. In other words, they can be from one faith or another, and they're taught through the lens of that faith. Moving toward further more and more to understanding who God really is. More and more to understanding the essence of what life is supposed to be like. But they don't just start out going like, okay, listen, your faith was completely all wrong about this, but you're a good person. Here's how the real truth is. No, they're very gentle in leading people along. Now, one thing I like about that, this idea that they really instruct them according to their own religious background and everything, is the people who see the being of light in the near-death experience. It's the same way. Often they're allowed to see the being of light as they would interpret that being from their own religious background. So in other words, we are told that people who are like Jewish, for example, might see that being of light and identify it with an angel. And that's okay, regardless of what that being of light is. Christians may identify with that light as being Christ, and that's okay. And people who don't have any religion might just see it as a being of light, full of love and pure wisdom, and that's okay. People are allowed to gravitate and be brought into this other world according to the views that they've already had. And apparently, what Swedenborg says is God and the angels work with that and gently lead that person to a much stronger, much more pure, and much more full understanding and life in heaven.